Hey, everybody. So if you have been hanging out with us for the last couple seasons of the podcast, you probably remember us mentioning Flaututi in our past episodes. Our friend Molly Sharp, who incidentally was also a guest in season 1, started Flaututi to share her awesome duet arrangements of standard viola rep, which are great for teaching, and it has now grown into a wide-ranging catalog of one-of-a-kind resources for violists and beyond. Steph, do you remember when we played one of the duets from a holiday bundle together?
Yes, it's one of my most cherished holiday memories.
Aww.
But actually, one of my favorites is something that all string instrumentalists would love. It's called Making Double Stops Ring, a guided exploration of just intonation. And Molly actually shared the viola version with us last year, and I am not exaggerating when I say that it completely changed the way I think about intonation. No one has ever explained it to me like this before. I think that we all realize on some level that a B in all situations is not the same, but why?
Yeah. Have you ever had that classic argument in a string quartet setting when you're trying to tune a chord and maybe we're playing that B and we're being told, no, it needs to go lower. No, it needs to go higher. It needs to go here. Wouldn't it be amazing to save all those hours for our string quartet students with no debate? We just know where it's supposed to go. Everyone agrees because there's only one way.
Right. You can just gift them copies of this book.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing personal. Just here's a book about intonation. Well, Molly has made it easy for all of us to play in tune. So whether you play viola, violin, cello, or bass, there's a version for you. You can find this pragmatic book, viola duet arrangements of classic viola repertoire, and so much more at vlatutti.com under Marketplace, or look in this episode's show notes.
Welcome to the Viola-centric podcast. We are two curious violists finding inspiration through authentic and challenging conversations in the professional music world. I'm Liz.
And I'm Steph. Let's jump in the deep end.
All right, I think we're officially live.
Great.
Hello, Facebook world.
Hello, Facebook world.
We're officially live.
Yeah, so I'm Steph.
And I'm Liz.
And we are with Viola-centric, and we've done a couple of these lives out here on the Facebook universe, but this time is super special because we get to do one live from the Heifetz Institute, and we have two extremely prestigious and special guests. So we have Atar Arad and Paul Neubauer, who are both highly esteemed viola professors. We're so lucky to have snagged them while they're down in Virginia.
We're thrilled to be with you.
Yay!
Nice to
We're
be with
super
you.
excited. So, like I mentioned, you all are at the Heifetz Institute. So, Paul, you were just saying this is your first year there. How did you get hooked up with the Heifetz Institute, and what drew you to want to teach there and want to work there this summer?
Actually, it's not my first year. That was sort of an inside joke. But in any case, I've been here maybe 4 times, and it's a wonderful place. I think what is unique about it is that the students get a couple lessons a week with different professors every week, which is something I look back in my studies, how interesting that would have been to get so many different opinions.
Right.
And I even tell the students, you're going to get all this input and you have to decide what's interesting, what's going to help you, because we all have different ideas. So you get that different input. They also have studio classes each week. They have various other classes that I think have to do with music. And they have chamber music. And it's the atmosphere is wonderful. There's a really wonderful vibe here, and just very positive, and the level's very high. So I've enjoyed it every year. This year it's raining, but it has to rain sometime.
It's not the nicest weather in the area, that's for sure.
They also get communication lessons. This is something that they emphasize here. And they even, like do a little theater and stuff like this, because it's all connected.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting. Communication lessons?
Yeah.
What's involved in that?
Well, I think th- th- people teach them how to talk to an audience, how to, like, even, like, because when we play, we are into the music, sometimes into something else than us, and they have to learn how to act too. And they also, before every time they play, they have a little speech and they rehearse it.
That's amazing.
It's very nice.
It's very helpful to be able to speak in front of an audience, because if you haven't had that practice and you go there and say, you're worrying about that instead of concentrating on the music. So it's a great thing. We actually heard something very amusing today about the speech class, that one of the exercises was talking with your tongue out of your mouth. And
Yes.
I think that I'd never heard that before. Maybe you ever heard this.
Never.
But the point was, I guess, that if you can speak with your tongue outside your mouth, I'm not going to demonstrate, by the way, but if you speak that way, perhaps, actually, we tried it at lunch, and we were speaking much more clearly after we did that. So they have their tricks.
I love that. It's really interesting because I run a chamber music program for high school students, and I think about how uncomfortable they are when we're like, you should be able to communicate to the people watching you perform what it is that you're performing and giving them some context, because most of the time your audience isn't necessarily going to know what they're listening for, and having somebody speak that very clearly is such a great way to connect with them, right?
Yeah.
But we do take that for granted as musicians. We just want to be in the music. So I love that. I think
But
that's
also there
fantastic.
is the movement,
Yeah.
and I think they get lessons about movements too.
Right.
And this is not only communicating with an audience, is when you play chamber music,
Yes.
you want to show your fellow players what's on your mind and what's your timing and stuff like this. Yeah.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, when I coach chamber music and I see people cueing, to start something, and they, do something like, and they're playing something that doesn't relate to that, I like to talk about, well, you're not only telling your colleagues the mood you're going to be playing, you're telling the audience, you're communicating to them. If you go like, and you haven't played anything, and we've already established, we've got something pretty calm there, whatever. And so and of course, my personal thing is that cueing is overrated, because sometimes people cue like, and you're just like, oh, yeah, that's my own personal hang up. It's like, maybe we don't need such a cue.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was once in Japan, and there was a quartet of very young people, and I told them that every time they play something, to pass it to the person, not to the person who is playing with them, to the person who is taking it from you. And it was at first hard to explain that,
Oh, I bet.
until I said, it's like if you play soccer, you pass the ball, and I showed them, and then they play the recital, and you had to see that, the fun that they had, like they are playing a soccer game. It was the Dvorak American that they played, It was
Yeah.
really nice.
Oh, that's so great. Well, and of course, Karen Tuttle famously had students practice facial expressions in the mirror, right? To get to try to pull the emotion out of a student, practice looking a certain emotion, and that's helps you convey the thing you're trying to convey too. That's so great all around.
I love all those chamber music exercises.
Oh, so much. It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the absolute best. So, I think it's safe to say, you know, you're both incredibly established in the higher ed pedagogy world. Um, could you talk a little bit about, and maybe Atar, you could start with this one, your experience in higher ed teaching, what you enjoy most about working with students at that level, and, you know, just, I guess, what your processes are for working with your students at that level from the time they start with you. And if you guys both feel like talking a
Well,
little bit about that, that would be amazing.
well, first of all, we have something in common with the students, which is called music. And I enjoy it, and I enjoy communicating what I think, learning what they think. And I also think that I want to believe that I consider my student as adults with their own personality, and my goal is not musically to make them another Atar, but to develop their own thing. About that, I also like to teach technique, and with the belief that we have something in common with sports, which is the record is always broken. There is no one record that is unbreakable. People thought that running the mile is not possible less than 4 minutes, and it was enough if the scientists say that people tried and finally succeeded. And now in some colleges there are people who run, that fast. So there is always progress, and there is progress in playing too. And it's kind of dual thing. One of my greatest pleasure is to have a student who can do something that I cannot, because I taught him, he learned everything that I can teach and then did something better. And sometimes I do it and I say, what did I do? I'm a little jealous. Yeah.
Right.
But this is really a great pleasure to be a part of it.
I love that so much, because I find myself with my students teaching them things that I had trouble with at their age. And they often surprise me by not having the same issues that I did when I was their age. And it's refreshing, but it's a great reminder that you're not teaching yourself. You're teaching this completely unique entity. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that both Atar and I, we teach for each student. It's not like a general thing, you have to do this, this, and this. And you take from them their strengths and you try to encourage that. And if you think that you can help them in other ways, we're trying to find that way. There's certain things I like to talk about and other teachers talk about, and maybe students say, he or she always says the same things. Sometimes you have to say the same thing over and over again, if you know what I mean. But one thing I'm very much interested in is being relaxed when I play, and I try to encourage my students to do that as well. And there are other things that I have been taught that I like to impart on the students. Like, one thing I'm always telling my students is to play close to the next string. And this is something that I had the privilege of being in master classes with Primrose. And that was one of the things he was talking about a lot. And because when we were our first teachers all said play in the middle of the string, if you know what I mean. You play da 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 da. And maybe that's great for little kids so they don't play on more than one string. But in reality, I think it's not a great idea, because why would you be on one string and then have to go way over to the next string? So I'm always thinking about where I'm heading with my bow I don't think about it anymore. It just happens at this point. But being close to the next string makes, first of all, your life easier. There's less work, but it sounds better too. So that's like one of the things. I think we both have, I don't know if they're tricks, but they're ideas that we want to encourage the student to maybe think about and hope that it.
For me, I call it, I tell them that anticipation is the mother of all techniques. And the thing with the string, it's the same thing. You know, you play, but you have to anticipate where are you going. And
Exactly.
actually not do it suddenly, but do it gradually. And exactly as you say, I don't have to think about it, but I see the students, when they cross the string, sometimes even colleagues. But for me, legato is the most beautiful thing. It's like the line of a painter so I don't want to break it. So it's the same, idea.
In actuality, if a lot of the passages we agonize over, if we could play it all on one string, it would be so nice. But it's like let's say the Brahms piano quintet. For the violins, they go da dee da 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 da. Wouldn't it be nice if they went da dee da 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 da? You can't do it. It's not going to work. But that's like when I'm playing that piece, I sometimes say that. What if it were that way? Can you cross the strings and make it sound like it's on one string?
Absolutely.
Because then it's a seamless thing instead of da 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 da. So,
yeah, it's so funny because we often wind players are told to think like string players. And this is an instance where I think we can think like wind players.
Yeah. Well, also the voice. I mean, I'm always asking my students can you sing that for me?
Oh.
And sometimes they don't want to sing, whatever. But the point is that we naturally sing, usually in a very musical way, and sometimes we don't necessarily approach the instrument as naturally.
Yeah.
But it's, of course, easier said than done. You can sing everything. That doesn't mean you're going to play in a natural way. But I think that's one thing that I sometimes talk about.
Sure. Well, it has to start from somewhere. You have to have the idea before you can speak the idea. You have to have the phrase before you can play the phrase.
Exactly. I also talk about goals, that I think you have to have an idea of how you want to sound and what you want to do, instead of, I should just do this. Yep. You've got to say, this is what I want it to sound like. How am I going to get there? And then you have to figure it out. But if you just say, okay, if I just do my scales every day and my etudes and play through the piece 5 times, everything's good. That's I think the longer approach that may not always be as helpful. But
speaking about scales, I have my own system of scales that I want to tell you because I'm very proud of this and it gives results. Is that I don't use abstract scales. I take the scales from the pieces that people play, a choice, and then do them at first kind of thinking about every little thing that, technically. I'm going to this string, I'm going with my elbow here when I'm shifting ahead of time, etc. And it's a lot of things to think about. So slowly, but since we cannot think about many things at the same time, very slowly, so that we can think one thing after the other. Mm-hmm. Then when it becomes a little natural, a little faster, maybe with a better sound. And then a little faster, maybe thinking what kind of vibrato. In the end, as we go, I say performance. And when you perform, you don't think about anything technical, only what music I want to make with this scale, and see if you can do it naturally. That's my scales.
Is there a written method? Do you have like a book that you've written all this out?
No, but I encourage at the time, kind of my students to learn how to do finale or Sibelius, and take all kind of scales and write them down the way they are in the music. And then to have their own book, they can have a huge, if they do it since they are undergraduate, they can have a huge book of scales, and they can easily in computer say arpeggios and this, And also I find the advantage of this. There are two. One is we use not the fingering of the scale, but the musical fingering that we want for the passage. The second thing is as a former quartet player, I believe that there is not one sort of intonation, that everyone, the modern player, has different intonations, like different when I play with piano, different when I play with a quartet, different when I play by myself. The abstract scales make you, brainwash your fingers to go to the same place, and I'm against that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
I often have a hard time, putting that abstract scale to what I'm working on. Not that it's, you understand conceptually what you're doing with them, but it's disconnected. This is brilliant. And it can be translated into so many ways. I know people who have chosen, instead of creating, I'm thinking of a horn player friend, instead of using an etude that already exists and then practicing orchestra excerpts, she created etudes out of the orchestral excerpts for the techniques that she needed to work on, and then it was immediately related. And so to do this in a comprehensive way and have a whole library for yourself as an individual that just is unique to you, that is very cool.
I'll say one positive things about the normal old scales.
Yes, please.
Not that
We're not anti-scales.
Not that I actually practice scales. Don't tell anybody. I probably should. But when I'm playing, I am hearing in scales. So meaning that if you are trying to play something in tune and your music is marked, do this note higher, this note lower, this note, that's incredibly hard. And when you can hear, even these three notes are in A flat major, not whatever the scale is. You don't even have to say A flat major. But if you can relate them to each other, it's much easier to play in tune. So I'm trying not to hear notes like a separate thing. I'm trying to always relate them to something. Now, granted, if you're playing some contemporary music that goes, forget about it. It's not going to work. But in a lot of things, that's how I'm hearing the pitches, and it makes it easier for me to hear it. And I encourage my students when things aren't in tune, it's like, well, can you just figure out what that scale is? And look, that note, these notes go together in one scale. If you can hear that, maybe that will help you play in tune with a better accuracy.
So good. Good. There's so much there. We could talk about scales all day.
Yes.
No, please.
I'm sure our live audience would love to hear that. But so as professors, you have students coming to you, new students coming to you all the time. And one of the ways that we're able to be successful on our instruments is to feel comfortable playing those instruments. And we had a little side conversation earlier about this, but Paul, I wonder if you could talk about how setup figures into helping your students achieve their best results. And have you changed anything about your setup anytime recently, or just what are your philosophies about what you need, what you don't need?
when I was, I think, 10 or 11, and I went to my new teacher, I had the shoulder rest that, everybody sort of has. And he said, get rid of that. So I've never used one since then.
Oh,
So
wow.
I used a sponge because if I didn't have anything, I felt that it was a little slippery. I needed some sort of friction. So for many years, I used a sponge. But in any case, as I got a little older, I was about 17 or 18. That's when I studied with Mr. Primrose. And Mr. Primrose said, I just hold the viola in the left hand entirely. And we're like, oh, really? And so he demonstrated playing behind his back and on his knee. And he said, look, I don't need this. It just happens to be resting here.
Oh my
but I'm
gosh.
holding it in my left hand. And I said, what? And we said, Mr. Primrose, how do you shift? I think it's a fair question.
Sure.
And so he said, well, just for the shift, I lift up for a split second because you need something to grab onto. So we're all like, wow, that's pretty incredible. And let me just show you something. This is perhaps the greatest violinist of all time, or certainly one of them, Mr. Fritz Kreisler, playing. You can see his hand is moving in this shot. You see that it's moving. Now look how he's holding that violin.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with his chin. It's just, I love this picture just because it's just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? What are you
His head's
doing?
completely free.
It's just like,
Yeah.
and of course his posture is just incredible. So after I worked with Mr. Primrose, I had a few weeks free and I thought, I'm going to try this. So I tried just playing, holding the left hand, and I realized I can't do this. So what I do is I do a combination that I hold the viola a lot in my left hand, and I rest it here or hold it here. So I have a lot of movement when I play. The pros of that is that I'm in control of the instrument. I can move it around as I see fit, and there's a freedom there.
Mm-hmm.
The shoulder rests that a lot of people use have the pro is that it's sort of easy to get around the instrument with that. It sort of rests there, but it locks you in place because it usually just sits in some sort of way that, oh, that feels comfortable, and you're sort of stuck playing. And, if you look at all the great old violists and violinists, you look at those pictures, you can see a lot of them. No one was used. First of all, the shoulder rest wasn't invented, so they couldn't even use it if they wanted to. But they played with a different way of playing. That's how they played. And you even look today with Baroque players. They're not, I don't think they're using that either. They're not even using a chin rest. So that kind of freedom, I think, is much more natural for the sound. And that gets us to the arc rest. So what happened with the arc rest is that my son, who's a violinist, happened to have one of these things. And I said, oh, what's that? He said, oh, I don't know, it's this arc rest. I said, well, let me try that. And I tried it, and it was perfectly as comfortable as my sponge. But I thought, wait a second, this sounds different. This sounds better. And so all of a sudden it's like, wait, I want to be comfortable and I want that freedom. And so what this arc rest does, I'm going to show you the violin arc rest and the viola arc rest. I actually quite often just use the violin arc rest, but you would see what you want. And they have different sized sponges that they can put on this arc rest. So what this does is this rests on the back of the instrument, and for whatever reason, it sounds better than actually, it sounds better than regular shoulder rest. Every time I test it, and I'm obsessed with sound. Every time I'm with somebody and they have a shoulder rest, I say, well, try this. And it's always like, oh, that sounds better. But do you want to tell your story about the arc
Yeah,
rest?
Well,
please, let's hear
first
it.
of all, let me tell you that I also believe, to go back to what, that people are different.
Sure.
And there is not only one way to play well. And this reminds me that I was teaching in another school, not in Bloomington, and one of the greatest violinists in the world came to give a class. And what he said to the student who played, take this shoulder rest out. There is no one great violinist who plays with a shoulder rest, which is revolting, I think.
Way too black and white. Way too black and white.
Also because the teacher of this person was in the room. He was a great violinist, and he used the big shoulder rest. And the teacher was so offended that he left. But I believe people are different, and there is no monopoly. But to come to and also, like I have to tell you that this is one thing I disagreed with my better part, Mimi Zweig.
Oh.
Because she called all this shoulder rest Brooklyn Bridge. That's, her insulting, and her students, she doesn't let them play.
Wait, she doesn't like the Brooklyn Bridge?
No.
Okay.
She
Just
does
to
not.
get-
Anti-New York.
Yeah, she doesn't let her students, and I do. I want
Yeah,
the students.
I also let my students use
I want them to arrive by themselves. Now, to come to the arc rest, where was I? Oh, Heifetz Institute, together with Paul. And I saw that, and the same that he asked his son, I asked Paul, what is this? Can I try it? I tried it, and the first notes that I played, my viola sounds better. And it took me exactly a week before I ordered it and play with it, because for me, the most important thing when we play is not how comfortable we are, is the sound. We have to find the sound and then how to be comfortable. That's I believe in it. And then I have to tell you that that we are not the only ones. I showed it to Mimi.
Oh.
Immediately. Oh, this is better. She already have some students who are playing with this. And I show it to a great violinist friend of mine, Vadim Glutzman. The first moment, oh my God, this is much better. So there is something, and I think it's, like they can explain, why, but it doesn't touch much. It's like a sponge, but
it just
does not touch
maybe
the instrument.
to show it a little bit more. It's a curve here, and it's resting on the bottom of the instrument, and they have different size pads. So I guess the idea is that the bigger the area, you would use larger pads. I have to say that everything you do to an instrument, you're changing the sound. You use different strings, you move the bridge an inch, you get a new tailpiece. Everything changes the sound. This changes it in quite the dramatic way. And I mean, for us, I agree with Atar that the sound is important, incredibly important. That's what we're doing, it's sound. So this device it's very bizarre, whatever the reason. They have wood arc rests. This happens to be carbon fiber, which I think has the best sound, personally, for me. But we were doing a test the other day of the different size sponges and the different arc rest violin versus viola, they all have a different sound. As I said, everything you do to an instrument, even if the placement of the arc rest will change the sound. It's like anything, as I said, you do on the instrument. You can change the tail gut on your tail piece. That can dramatically change the sound. Even when the tuning, the pegs, which you wouldn't think affect the sound at all because they're not really connected, they change the sound too. Yeah. So you can get, of course, overly obsessed with this, but I'm always trying to figure out the best kind of sound that I can get out of an instrument because it's so crucial. As we're in the music business after all.
Yeah.
But then, after I tried, to decide what's the level, how many and what, it takes me time because I also want to be comfortable. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's the sound. But I have to tell you about shoulder rest, that I still think, people should try different, to be more convinced. And I know, like, I made my career with a shoulder rest, real one, yeah? And that was the only way I played. Until one day, I had a concert. And it was weekend where I had to practice, and I played. It was a difficult program that needed a lot of practicing. My shoulder rest broke, but I wanted to practice. So I took a sponge, like from the kitchen, the cleaning, and put it. And I said, "Oh my God, I wasted my life playing with the other." So the next day, on Monday, I played a concert with the sponge. But I really want people, I want everyone to try stuff, but to not because the teacher does, but I want them to be convinced.
Yeah, there are many shoulder rests. There are different chin rest highs. You can get the large chin rest that's been built up.
Right.
We all know there are a billion ideas out there, and everyone's trying to come up with the next great thing. This happens. We happen to think this works great for us, but
I think
but trying different things is crucial. But that you find, and then you may say, "Oh, this works," and then a month later, saying, "Well, maybe try something else." That's part of what we're always trying to feel better and sound better. So.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking about that when you were talking about the heights because, and Stephanie knows this, for me, it depends on what I'm playing. And in some instances where I'm sitting in orchestra, I find if I'm on the inside or the outside, or what part of the stage I'm even in, it dictates sometimes the height just because of the way I have to sit in any given way. If I feel like I need more support, I might go a little higher. If I feel when I'm playing in the quartet, I really use the really thin one, but we're both converts in that way too. There's some major flexibility there. I'm curious to know how you go about taking that journey with your students. Let's say, a student will benefit from a setup change. How do you kind of ease them into that concept and get them trying different things? And what are there sort of markers you notice when you feel like they need to explore something different? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but just curious to know. And maybe Atar, you could start with that one.
Well, for me, it's very easy if I feel that a student needs a change. I just explain to them why, and I say to them, it's not going to happen in one day. Because not only you have to learn how to do that, but also you have to get rid of habits and stuff like this. So I think, you decide when you want to do it, but I think you have to devote a certain amount, depending what change, devote a certain amount of time to be obsessed with this and do it. Even if you don't feel that you get result immediately, But also people are different. There are people who will never do it. There will people who will do it a long time. For instance, I had a student. I can tell you her name, Melia Watras. She is teaching now in Seattle, and she is very, you know, to the point. She decides to do something, she does. Yeah. So I remember, and that was many, many years ago. I told her that her sound was not good, and I think it's because she holds the bow too much. And I said, the only way for you to learn is to take a week and don't care about the sound, just don't hold your bow. And she said, yes, I will do that. And then the next day we had a class, and who is playing? She is. And I got angry because she agreed to do a week of not holding the bow, so she cannot play in the class. So she goes and plays, and it sounded wonderful. And I went to her and I said, tell me what's the change, what you did. This time I want to learn. And she says to me, oh, you told me not to hold the bow. I'm not holding the bow. So that was
Just
one
like that.
time. Yeah,
Just like that.
maybe she didn't understand what a week meant.
yeah. But anyway, people are different. Yeah.
For sure.
And but I try to also find the way, how to, convince them.
Yeah.
And then I also tell them that maybe it's not the Bible. Maybe you can hear other people say other stuff that can help you do that. But this you need to improve on this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I agree, that everyone is different and everyone's built differently. We all need different things. And certainly habits are hard to break. You start at age 5 or whenever, and you're always playing in one way, and you're 18, it's hard to change. So you have to want to change, and you have to feel there's a reason to change, not just to change.
Yep.
You've got to say, well, maybe it's worth exploring, just see what happens. Like the idea that Mr. Primrose had of just holding it with the left hand. I tried it. It changed the way I approached the viola, just playing with the left hand. And I would suggest anybody who wants to try that, if you have a couple of weeks, just try just holding in the left hand. As I said, you just grab for a second, mostly just for the shifts down.
Yeah.
And if you do that for a week, you're playing, well, just like you were saying with the bow. You try it and you see what happens. And you may say, oh, that's stupid and horrible, but, sometimes it's worth just trying something new. And for me, it was like, wow. And there were certain things with my studies with him that he emphasized that have always stuck with me. And that was one of the main things, was how he held the viola. It just really resonated with me. So.
But I want
No
to
pun
add,
intended.
to what you said, how important it is to have a good teacher when you are small. And I know, that Mimi is very known, that she has results, people who became really the most known violinists and stuff like this. And they had a, nice beginning. And that's really lucky, the people who can study with good teachers like this. And so, because I will take a child of 12, 13, forget it. I cannot. It's not my... so I know that there are some people who really know how to do it,
They are so special.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Well, this is great. And now we've come to the portion of our evening where we're going to ask you some questions that we got from our listeners and people who contributed them on social media and other places. And so maybe Liz, if can you look in the comments and see if we have anything coming in?
We don't have any fresh comments.
Nothing
So I think
fresh.
we can go with our previous.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we could start with our prior comments.
Okay, great.
My mom has chimed in and my cousin. So hi guys.
Oh, hi, mom and cousin.
We have more viewers than that, but nobody really in there. And I know that our friends from ArcRest, Aaron and Tigran, are kind of lurking in the comment section, so they can jump in and field anything as well if it
Great.
comes up. So, but we could start with what we've already got.
Yeah, so actually, we had a question about scale methods, and I think that we talked about that, which was very organic and excellent. So I think that listener's going to be really excited to hear that information. Now, the next question that we got was kind of an existential question that I think that we all face as players. How long did it take you to feel like you were good enough? Good enough, in quotes.
It never happened.
It never happened.
Yeah, of course.
Agreed.
It never happened.
I think we'd all say that, wouldn't we?
I think we're all pushing that rock up the hill, and it keeps on coming back down. That's actually part of the joy. I don't know if joy is the word, but I'm never satisfied. So I'm always trying to better myself if I can. What can I do? Is there anything? What? Help me. I'm trying to figure anything out that might help me get better. And it's just, as I think we all agree, we're never satisfied, but that's just part of art.
Yeah.
I would think that I don't know, a great painter, they just see their painting that they've done, or maybe they're completely satisfied. I don't know. But at least for me, it doesn't matter the performance. It's like, oh, well, maybe it was okay, but oh, there was that moment. Oh, and that happened. Oh, and that happened. And of course, I think we all know that what we're doing here is amplified about 1,000%, and that what the audience here is much less. And sometimes I'll listen to recordings that I thought a performance was really not up to standard. I say, well, actually, it was okay. Because everything is magnified to such a degree when we're playing that, oh, that was out of tune. That was so flat. And then I listen to it and say, that was a little on the low side, but maybe it was okay. So that's part of it.
I have to tell you that I remember until today that I was on a tour playing a concerto, and there was one place in this concerto that I felt that I played unbelievably well. And it was, when I played it, I felt so excited that my hair,
That's a great feeling, yeah.
Then I had to play the same piece again. It was actually, I remember it was in Holland. It's a tour of 6 cities. So the next time I could not wait to arrive to the same place, not just to play the concerto, the same place, and have the same feeling and have my hair. It never came back. It never came back, because sometimes it's a question of living the moment. Yeah,
Yes.
and it's not a question of say I'm good or I am, but also, like when the question of when, I have to tell you that I decided to be a musician when I was like 18, when I began already to go to the university to study something, and I missed so much the practicing of the instrument, that I felt that even though I didn't believe that there will be classical music when I'm 60, I didn't believe in it, because my friend at school, no one was interested in this.
Yeah.
I said, I cannot live without it. So it's not a question of being good. I didn't feel that I'm that good. I just felt that I cannot live without it. And that was kind of interesting. So I left whatever I was studying and began to devote myself.
In my case, I was named after Paul Doctor. He was my godfather, and so my memory's not good, but I think I sort of always thought I'm always going to play the viola. Did I always think I could survive as a violist? I don't think maybe at a young age I was even thinking about that, but it's like, oh, well, Paul, you're always going to play it was just like, I never argued against that. It's just like, oh, well, you're going to play the viola. And so that's what happened.
But there was someone who knew that he's going to be a great violist.
Who's that? Artur?
Well, I was in L.A. in some party, and there was his mother that I didn't know, who was at the party. I was with the Cleveland Quartet, I think, at that time. And it was a long, long time ago. Time is running. And she told me about her boy who is playing viola. I said, good, you know. And then she said, and he's going to be the best violist.
And I was thinking that it might be nice to start my bio. We all have bios that we send out. That Paul Neubauer has been called the greatest musician of all time by his mother. By his mother.
Yeah.
What do you think? So I think there's a nice ring to it.
We should all adopt that.
I love that. I'll put that in our bio.
Greatest violist of all time.
He told me that. And then I had the pleasure to coach his daughter in Ravinia in the Stins Institute. And she was playing Bartók Quartet very well. And then in the middle of the coaching, I said in front of her colleagues, you know, your dad is the best violist ever. And she looked at me like she could not believe that I, of all people, say that. Because I would say that he is the second, but that's another story. But she could not believe that I would say that. And then I added, according to your grandmother.
Okay, this leads into a good question that came to us. What are your favorite stories about each other?
Well, we met basically 2 years ago here at Heifetz. And it was during the really pandemic time.
I was going to say weird times to meet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the teachers were teaching here on Zoom, over the Zoom, because they gave us a choice. And both Atar and I decided to come in person. And there weren't that many people around of the faculty. And we just started hanging out together. We went to a nice dinner, and I've of course have heard of Atar for years, and an icon of the viola world, and his great recordings and the Cleveland Quartet. But you never, it's just a name. It's just a name. And then we started to hang out 2 years ago, and we became friends. And as a matter of fact, it comes to this year, and tomorrow night, I should have mentioned this about Heifetz, that they live stream on Facebook and YouTube most of their performances. And tomorrow night, Atar and I are performing a concert where we're playing a Brahms sextet. But the highlight of the concert will be that we're playing a duet that Atar wrote.
And it's beautiful preview.
We got a little preview of that yesterday.
Yes, we were rehearsing it.
And I cannot tell you what a pleasure it is to play with you.
Well, you're only saying that because I'm sitting next to you, but it's okay.
No. I'm sincere.
It's on the record.
Yeah.
But in any case, as I've been saying, that it's so rare that you can actually play with the composer. I've worked with composers before where they're sitting there and you ask their opinion, something. But it's like in chamber music. It's very different when you coach a group of young people than when you're playing with the young people. You change. The way you interact with them is different than when you're a coach. And I think they get so much out of that when you're playing with them. And it's the same thing when you play with a composer, which I've done so little because it just doesn't happen. And so it's been a great privilege
On the other end,
to work with you.
Like today when we rehearsed, I told him, after he played the beginning when he's by himself, I said, like when I wrote it, I thought of that kind of sound. But I like what you are doing. Just keep doing it. Right, no? Yeah, because
That's so special.
I learned
Yeah.
too. But I have to tell you about composing. We talked before about influencing students. We are going to have, I wrote a piece which is a chaconne. It was commissioned by the Hindemith competition in Munich and already played there, and I played it. But then I had the idea to ask 4 former students who are composing, each one to write and play Almand, the other Courant, Saraband, Jig. And we are going, and we do a piece together, writing it together. In other words, each one contribute a little like the Brahms sonata with the other 2, and we got a grant, and we are going to record it and publish it and stuff like this. So talking about pleasure of having student, we are going to call it Partita Party. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And that's happening in October.
Oh, that's so great. Congratulations. How exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, for me.
So you have the this performance tomorrow night. Is that the ultimate concert of your tenure there, or are you there throughout the summer?
I think Atar leaves on Saturday. I leave on Sunday. We're both here just for 1 week because, as I said, they have usually a different faculty every week here.
Got you. Yeah. Well, they are certainly lucky to have both of you during 1 week.
Yeah. That's really excellent.
Love that as a student.
We are lucky too.
Yeah. Except for the rain. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we have more questions in here about setup and relaxed positioning and things, but I think you guys really covered the bases in a lot of ways with those subjects. So, this has been just a absolutely wonderful hour to get to speak with you and to just hear your perspectives on all these things.
And all the stories.
My gosh.
I could listen to you two talk.
How about we go for another hour? No.
Maybe another time.
I have to say, you ask good questions and
Great.
good atmosphere. We can do another hour.
Oh, well, we might take you up on that.
We'll have to have a sequel at
Another
some
time.
point.
Sequel, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of this.
It's been such a pleasure.
And I wanted to thank Alex, who's behind the camera
Yes,
here from
thank
the
you,
Heifetz
Alex.
Institute, and for the Heifetz Institute also for these cameras
whole
and the
setup.
whole shebang.
You are in the performance area, right?
Yes, this is where we're performing tomorrow night. So
beautiful.
A big thank you. So, and great to
really
chat with the two of you.
Absolutely. And thank you to our friends at ArcRest for making it possible to have you guys here. And we're just really, just so happy to have this conversation. And I guess anybody who's curious to see it, maybe I'll do this too, can catch the live stream. Is that right?
Yes, it will be live
Just
tomorrow night at
online?
8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
And do we...
7:30.
Oh.
7:30.
Perfect.
7:30. Great.
If they do...
8 o'clock will be when we play.
They are missing us.
Oh, you're going to miss us. Okay.
We don't want to miss you. That's why we're all tuning in.
That was a Freudian slip.
That's right. Just to let
Yeah.
That's so great. Wonderful. Well, we'll make sure to give you guys a shout out then, see if we can get people to join you as well. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much,
Thanks
guys.
so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for listening today, and thanks also to our season sponsors, Arkrest, Potter Violins, and Aria Lights.
Another thanks to Alto Clef Gifts, where you can purchase Viola-centric shirts and mugs, and a variety of other fun items featuring our beloved Alto Clef.
If you loved today's episode, consider writing us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you want the chance to hang with us and have access to behind-the-scenes audio and video recordings, check out our new Patreon.
Our episodes are edited and produced by Emily MacMahon and Liz O'Hara Stahr.
The Viola-centric theme music was written and produced by JP Wogeman and is performed by Steph and myself.
Thanks again for listening. Let's talk soon.